Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Good to have you here, good to have your ears. I hope you're well, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It was a very nice, gentle-paced episode, and... What? What? What?
And nothing can go wrong. Oh no, it all went wrong.
Okay, so this episode wasn't exactly a gentle pace. So, we are kicking off with Andor, episode 6, titled The Eye. We finally get to see what the eye looks like. We get to understand, ultimately, where Andor sits in all this. And we even got a little bit of dissension within the ranks of our rebels themselves. A lot did happen in this week's episode, so I don't know how long this review is going to be by the time I've edited it, but it might be the longest from the entire series so far. If you've been around my channel since the beginning and since the first episode review for the first 3 of Andor, you'll know the format, how I do it by now. I like to break down the episode as best I can, draw up on the high points of it, and then leave you with my thoughts and then ask for yours in return by the end.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
So we open up with Andor and Nemik having a rather interesting discussion that conveys both their beliefs rather well from a very intelligent manner. The episode did a really good job of explaining last week that Nemik's belief is quite strong in the rebellion and that he thinks, that oppression should be completely gone with, and he's a solid rebel at the core of it all. And he doesn't want to die, but he will if he has to, in name of freedom for the galaxy. Andor's belief, however, is that he'll do whatever it takes for him to survive, but the Empire will never learn, and they'll never take lessons from people every time they try and rise up, which I thought was equally as interesting. So it was a really cool, intelligent, well thought out and constructed conversation, so fair play to the scriptwriters for this one. Worked really well. We then get a bit of insight into what the Imperials are actually doing on Aldhani. They're not just necessarily stripping the resources of the planet, but they're also exploiting the locals themselves by trying to keep them entrapped and away from their traditions, as it was confirmed by what will be our main Imperial officer we stick with for the episode, Jayhold, that they were exploiting them by setting up little camps, little areas for drinking, for congregating and things like that along the path towards where the Imperial base is, the dam, and where the eye will be. And they're trying to make sure that basically the control is always there, and they're stripping any level of prosperity away from the civilians, with weak signs of prosperity from themselves, with offerings of drinks and food and places to lay their heads, which they hope will just split the group of locals completely and weaken them ultimately to basically be taken in ready for slave labor. We then get a full insight to what the plan for them is. They're going to use the eye to cover their actions and their escape ultimately, and by the end of the episode we find out that they actually need the eye to help clear the Imperial reinforcements that are chasing them and to actually get out of the stratosphere and away from the Imperial base ultimately. So it's nice to actually see the plan fully enacted in this episode. We then catch up with 4 of the guys of our group, with Taramin, Nemik, Skeen and Andor, as they are basically going to be the ones that are running inside the base and capturing Jayhold, as they need an Imperial officer to open up the vault for them. They've got Gorn on the inside, who's trying to place all the pieces appropriately so that they can just maneuver inside the base without complication. The 2 girls of the group, I have completely forgotten the name apart from Vel. They scuba dive over towards the dam and the base, and they jam communications, and they abseil down to meet up with Tamarin and the rest of the group inside to fully enact their plan and obviously infiltrate the vault and get out there. An awful lot does happen in a very short space. So the Eldanis reach the Imperial dam slash base. They get ready for their ceremony and party that they have to celebrate the eye, and obviously a lot of the Imperial officers are positioned by Gorn to make sure that they don't interrupt what they're trying to do inside the base. They capture J-Hold and his family, hold his family hostage, get him to open the vault, and start using all the workmen that are down there to load up as much as they can on the ship. But they only have a certain amount of time, and during this, the Imperial comm scrambler that was set up by Val is somehow allowing their communications to be heard by the Imperial comm tower itself, and they get in contact with the field base on world and get the stormtroopers ready to basically fly out and try and take down, our heroes as they're leaving. And that was a really cool scene in itself, actually, was the TIE fighter troopers, stormtroopers, whatever, getting set up in their TIE fighters. It was really, really cool. Loved the visuals. Then once the Imperial comm tower has caught on to what's going on, they then send out all the soldiers, and the guy that is leading the tower himself leads a small garrison down towards the vault to try and see what the hell's going on. And when they get down there, they realise what's going on, and J-Hold dies from a heart attack from being manoeuvred around quite a lot. If you are unfamiliar with this actor, he's been in a couple of shows before where his character has died from a heart attack. I don't know if that's supposed to imply something, but it was actually really cleverly set up at the beginning of the episode where he was trying on, a smarter uniform than he'd normally wear, and he couldn't get the belt on because he basically gotten too fat. So it's a nice, subtle heads up there that actually the guy is really unhealthy. Then all of this leads to the best part of Andor so far, and that's really sad to say. Is I've praised the show for episode 1 to 3 and episode 4 for the deep character development and exploring their mindsets and the world building, etc. The show's set design has been beautiful. The show as a whole has been done extremely well, but I think we hit probably my favourite part of Andor so far was actually leaving the vault in the ship, the blaster fight that came out just before it, and it led to a lot of high stakes, a lot of impactful moments in the space of 5 minutes, and it was amazing. The visuals of it were awesome, the camera work was great, there was nothing that jarred. For me at least, everything flowed, it was intense. But before that, they leave not Val inside the base with J-Hold's family, and she's actually left on world. Taraman gets killed trying to get on board the ship, and as our heroes are about to take off, Andor thrusts the ship obviously to try and break out, and one of the trolleys that carries some of the cargo crushes Nemec, and he says that he can't feel his legs. And damn, like all of that in the space of 5 minutes, the amount of deaths, the amount of firefight, the amount of chaos that was going on, to then lose suddenly 3 of our characters in the space of 5 minutes, 1 obviously left behind, 2 are dead, and then we have honestly one of the most beautiful visuals I've seen in Star Wars for quite a while. And Nemec is saying that we need to use the eye to basically get rid of the TIE fighters and then ascend out of the skies to get off world. It was an awesome moment, truly a visual spectacle, and probably the high point of the Andor series so far, which is obviously saying something given how well it's been designed to this point. Andor asks, where the hell are we going? Skeen informs him that we set up a doctor in case things went wrong. They take Nemec to the doctor. However, unfortunately, after trying to, presumably reconstruct his spine, Nemec dies during surgery, and whilst that is happening, Andor is having a discussion with Skeen. Skeen reveals that he's kind of out for himself. There's 80 million credits or whatever on the ship, so why don't they just split it between them, and Andor shoots him.
Surprise, motherfucker!
This honestly was a powerful episode for what it did. It took a couple of individuals that we've had a little bit of time with, we've grown to care about, and killed all of them off. It did a Rogue One, and it worked because I stopped taking notes for a bit. I'm actually just discussing this off of my own memory, but I stopped taking notes because this episode, like this part in it, was unbelievable. It was incredibly good action, and it hits hard. It was really, really good. You start believing your heroes, and suddenly, you start to find out that none of them are actually as committed as they said they were. When they were faced with adversity, they started pulling out. Skeen wanted to leave. Val was trying to keep it together but failed. They left two of their members behind. Two are dead, and Andor revealed that he's here to basically get paid. He was getting paid in the Kyber, and he wants part of the payment from the credits. We end the episode in the Senate chambers on Coruscant. This was actually quite cool to see. Obviously, we're supposed to be seeing the Senate again in the Bad Batch in season 2, so obviously we're going to be getting a little bit more to do with Coruscant in the near future, but it was really cool to see this. But the reports started coming out of everything that was happening on Aldhani, and she was trying to deliver her speech within the Senate, and no one was listening. Everyone was leaving, and it was already quite sparse by the looks of it. But again, I don't really know who would want to listen to Mon Mothma talk for ages. But yeah, this ended the episode, and we concluded in the final seconds with Luthen, who found out that there was a rebel assault on Aldhani, and he just laughs with joy and seems a little relieved. It was a nice follow-up to last week's, given that we didn't really get a huge amount from that, and it delivered all of the intensity that was in Rogue One by the final fight, and I'm here for it. I love that. The series brought me back in, and it obviously ended with a similar spectacle to episode 3. I hope that this isn't going to be the case for every single arc, where it's just we get introduced to a new thing, we get a little bit of setup, and then we have one big blowout and climax. Because that's just going to become rather formulaic after a bit, and I think it's going to turn a lot of people off from the series. I think the show still has a lot of promise. Obviously, it's 24 episode run between 2 seasons, so we have officially reached a halfway point for the first season of Andor, and I'm excited to see what comes next as we, round off the year with Andor as well. And hopefully this series gets people talking and coming back again, because I think a lot of people are missing out. This episode is really, really good. That's going to do it for this week's episode, though, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you stuck around to this point. If you did, please hear my cries for help as I ask that you like this video. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of episode 6. How do you feel about Andor so far, now that we have reached the halfway point of its first season? And subscribe, because I will be covering the rest of Andor. I'll be covering Tales of the Jedi, She-Hulk tomorrow. I'm doing The Walking Dead as well in its final weeks, and I will also be going to watch Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and I'll be reviewing that. So there is still plenty more content coming your way from me, and I hope that you will join me for it. Until then, though, everybody, take care, and may the Force be with you.